That night, there was barely a word between us. Sarah carried on with her usual preparations as though nothing had happened, as though the weight of what had transpired between us earlier that day didn't exist. I watched in silence, unable to find the words to express what I was feeling. Deep inside, I was struggling to accept the overwhelming reality. My voice no longer seemed to matter to her. It felt as if I had been erased from her world. By the time the night of the party rolled around, the confusion had turned to pain. I wasn't sure what stung more, her cold defiance, or the fact that it seemed to roll off her, as though she didn't care how her actions were affecting me. When she stepped out of the bedroom, dressed to perfection, I couldn't help but notice how stunning she looked. Yet, beneath the surface of my admiration, there was something darker, a feeling of unease that gnawed at me. "Don't wait up," she said lightly, grabbing her purse and heading for the door without even looking back at me. Her words were casual, detached, as though she were going to a regular, mundane event. But I knew better. The hours that followed dragged on. I sat on the couch, flicking through channels and scrolling mindlessly through my phone, trying and failing to distract myself from the sense of dread growing in my chest. Around midnight, I sent her a quick text. "Everything okay?" It was a simple question, but it hung in the air, loaded with a tension I couldn't shake. The message was read, but not a single word of reply came through. By 2 a.m., I had already given up. She wasn't coming home tonight. My stomach twisted as I fought the gnawing feeling that she was somewhere else, with someone else. I couldn't stop the cycle of thoughts, fears of what she was doing, who she was with, and why she didn't feel the need to be honest with me. The next morning, she returned like nothing had happened. She walked in, looking as though she hadn't a care in the world, and casually mentioned how fun the night had been. Her voice was light, indifferent even, as she poured herself a cup of coffee. She avoided my eyes, and I didn't press for details. I could feel the distance between us widening, and I didn't want to hear the words that would confirm what I already suspected, what I already feared. Still, despite my reluctance, the gnawing feeling lingered. Something had shifted irreparably, and I wasn't sure how we could come back from it. As the weeks went by, the distance between us grew more pronounced. She spent more time on her phone, a phone I no longer had access to. I would catch glimpses of it lighting up with messages from names I didn't recognize, names that meant nothing to me. Her late nights became routine. The excuses she gave became thinner with each passing day. Work ran late, she'd say, though I knew full well that her freelance gigs rarely required her to stay out at night. Then, one night, I found the proof I had been dreading. Sarah had left her phone on the counter while she went to shower, and I found myself standing there, staring at the screen. A notification popped up, a message from a name I didn't know. I hesitated, torn between the urge to stay ignorant and the desperate need for the truth. Curiosity won out. I unlocked her phone. What I saw shattered me. The messages were not just flirtatious, they were explicit. Details of their plans, their late-night meetings, and the emotions she used to reserve for me. The texts revealed a side of her I hadn't known existed, one that didn't belong to me. The party she had insisted on attending wasn't just a casual gathering. It had been the backdrop for one of their encounters. For a long moment, I just stood there, numb with disbelief. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was clear. She had been seeing someone else. Someone named Liam. The shock gave way to something sharper. Anger. The betrayal wasn't just of my trust. It was a betrayal of everything we had built together. My thoughts swirled, and I fought the urge to confront her right then and there. I knew that acting impulsively would only give her the power to turn the tables on me. No, I couldn't let that happen. If I wanted to take control of the situation, I had to be strategic. I had to think things through carefully. That night, I lay awake, replaying the messages in my mind like a broken record. Each word cut deeper than the last. I wanted to confront her so badly, to demand answers, but I knew that acting out of rage wouldn't serve me. I had to be smart about this. I had to protect myself, and I needed to make sure she understood the full weight of her actions. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about reclaiming control over my life. Over the following week, I started putting the pieces together. The late nights, the party, the behavior I had ignored, it all made sense now. Using her phone's notifications as a springboard, I was able to track down the identity of the man she was seeing. His name was Liam. A quick social media search revealed far more than I'd hoped to find. This wasn't a brief fling. They had been seeing each other for months. There were pictures of them together, subtle enough not to raise suspicion, but in hindsight, they painted a story I hadn't been privy to. The more I uncovered, the more calculated I became. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of messages, photos, timestamps. I even reached out to a lawyer to discuss my options. I had sacrificed too much for this marriage to let it fall apart without securing what was rightfully mine. The thought of facing a divorce was terrifying, but I knew I couldn't leave myself vulnerable. Despite my growing resentment, I kept up appearances. I played the role of the unsuspecting husband, Sarah completely oblivious to the fact that I had already uncovered her secret. She continued as though nothing had changed, making casual remarks about her work obligations and nights out with friends, as if I was still the naive fool she thought I was. But little did she know, I was already several steps ahead. The turning point came 2 weeks later. Sarah announced she would be going out again, this time for drinks with a coworker. I didn't flinch. I didn't say a word. Let her think she was in control. Let her believe that I was still blind to what was happening. This time, I had a plan. The next move was mine. I had always trusted Sarah. She was my wife, my partner, the one person I thought would never betray me. But that night, something in her behavior shifted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more beneath the surface. I wasn't sure what it was, but my instincts were telling me I needed to dig deeper. I had no idea what I was about to uncover. It all started with a simple, casual evening. Sarah mentioned that she had to go out for work stuff, but the way she said it felt off. A little too rehearsed. So, as she got ready to leave, I decided to follow her, just to see where she went. She wasn't heading to the office or any of the places she usually frequented. Instead, she turned down a quiet street and pulled up to an apartment building. My heart skipped a beat as I realized it wasn't her usual hangout. I parked my car across the street, staying hidden in the shadows, and watched from a distance. She entered the building with a light, carefree step, and I could see Liam, a man I'd always trusted, greet her at the door with a smile. They laughed together as they walked inside. It felt like a punch to the gut, but I stayed calm. I had what I needed. The next morning, as Sarah sipped her coffee in the kitchen, acting as if nothing had happened, I sat across from her. I asked casually, "How was your night?" hoping she would slip up. But she didn't. She gave me the same rehearsed smile and replied, "Fine. Just work stuff." But I wasn't fooled. I slid a folder across the table toward her, keeping my voice even. "Good, because I've been meaning to talk to you about something." Her eyes flickered to the folder, but she hesitated. The moment she opened it, her face went pale. Inside, there were screenshots of her text conversations, pictures of her entering Liam's apartment, and, most damning of all, copies of the divorce papers I had already started preparing. "What is this?" she whispered, barely audible, as she scanned the contents. "It's everything," I said calmly. "Everything you've been hiding. Everything I've uncovered. It's over, Sarah." Her hands shook as she continued flipping through the evidence. She tried to defend herself, to justify what she'd done, claiming that she'd felt neglected, that Liam had just been a distraction. But I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I was done. The confrontation was stark, without drama or theatrics. There were no shouting matches, no tears. Just cold, hard facts laid bare on the table. She was cornered, and she knew it. "I've been protecting myself," I corrected her. "You made your choice when you decided to betray me. Now I'm making mine." The divorce proceedings moved quickly after that. I had all the leverage I needed, and it worked in my favor. Sarah's affair left her with little ground to stand on, and the legal process was ruthless. The house, the savings, the car, everything I had worked so hard for, remained mine. Sarah was left with nothing but the wreckage of her choices. For me, though, the sense of relief was overwhelming. The weight of her lies and betrayal lifted off my shoulders, and I began to rediscover who I was. I reconnected with friends I hadn't spoken to in years, threw myself into my work, and even picked up hobbies I had abandoned. Life, for the first time in a long while, felt like it was mine again. But the story didn't end there. One day, as I was scrolling through social media, I saw a picture that made me stop in my tracks. It was of Sarah and Liam, smiling together at an event, their arms around each other. The caption read, "New Beginnings, Red Hearts." I almost laughed. New beginnings indeed. It wasn't long before the laughter turned to vindication. A mutual friend reached out to me, revealing that Sarah's new relationship had already fallen apart. Apparently, Liam wasn't the man she thought he was. He had been seeing someone else the entire time they were together. Sarah, devastated and betrayed, was left alone to pick up the pieces once again. Karma, it seemed, had a way of balancing the scales. As the months passed, I found myself thriving. I wasn't just surviving anymore. The toxic, suffocating relationship that had once defined my life was gone, and in its place, I found peace. I was healthier, happier, and no longer weighed down by the constant emotional strain. Sarah's betrayal had, at one point, felt like the end of my world. But now, I saw it for what it was, a blessing in disguise. It had forced me to face the truth about her, about myself, and about what I truly deserved. And in the end, it had led me to a life that was mine again, a life I could rebuild on my own terms. For that, I would always be grateful.